Cash-a-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to episode 203 of the GeoGearHeads, and we're talking today about smartphone caching once again, a very hot topic. And of course, I'm here today with the bad cop, but who else do we have here?
Well, we are proud to have two returning co-hosts with us tonight. We have, and I must say, two of the best Canadians we've ever had on this podcast. We've got DeBear and Land Monkey.
Hello, everybody.
Well, Dave, we did a question for last week, so what was that?
Well, you had asked the GeoGearHeads to email in with their top pick for an app to find geocaches.
Yes, you did. And of the 35, wow, that's got to be some sort of record. Of the 35 people who entered, the winner was drawn, and that winner is G-Slink and Slinky Mama. So congrats, Gary. Are other podcast hosts allowed to win prizes? Is that how it works? I'm not sure how this...
It's just us that's not allowed. But I want to say that this was not our record. I think this is like a good 9 or 10 down the list for record number of entries.
Wow. Impressive. Well, very impressive.
I was hoping
for
a lot more.
Aren't you and Cash and Release pretty much just... Aren't we just trading prizes at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I have to confess that I actually did get a prize from Cash and Release that I opened in the office this morning and then Instagrammed that. So thank you very much, Gary and Michael. And thank you very much, coinsandpins.com, who were the donors of the prize, or vendors of selection, or whatever term Daryl likes to use, for the prize that Gary won.
We just usually say prize donor.
Prize donor.
So you guys might be curious to know what the actual results were. So the apps with the double-digit percentages were the geocaching.com apps on iOS with 31%, CGeo and Geosphere tied with 20%, CacheSense for Android with 11%.
Pretty cool. Then the remaining apps in the survey were the geocaching apps for Android and GC Droid with 6% each, then Locus, iGeoKnife, GeoBucket, and Looking for Cache, each with a whopping 3%.
Yeah, I was really kind of surprised at those results. I was expecting many more for CGeo, and I was not expecting the dominance of the geocaching apps on iOS. But I'm not that surprised that we didn't see more of the newer caching apps show up on any of these platforms, though GC Droid definitely did, which I think, we have some issues with self-sampling here because it's only 35 people, number one, but two, which makes up, about 1% of the audience? It doesn't even make up 1% of our audience. But it's not a good, diverse section of geocachers. It's the geocachers who listen to the show, and I think that's why we saw GC Droid even show up, because it is a newer app that doesn't seem to have gotten much attention outside of some of the more interested geocachers.
Interested or interesting?
Well, if they're more interested in geocaching, you're probably going to be more interesting as well. And if you listen to the show, of course you're more interesting, because you have all of this great information that you can share.
I find that fascinating. But I wasn't surprised by the geocaching.com app coming out on top, because really on iOS you've got a choice between the geocaching app and Geosphere. There are others.
Well, I'll argue that just because Geosphere has been out and is definitely the most dominant one. It was the one that's picked up the most market share. But if you go to the App Store and you're looking for a free app, then Geosphere isn't even going to show up on the radar, and Looking for Cache and GeoBucket both come up with higher search results.
That's true.
Right.
Now,
go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you. Geosphere works well, and it's one of the apps. It's one of my go-to apps. but there was a period of time where I went away from it because it wasn't as reliable as the official app. So there's my 2 bits.
I was just going to throw in there that I think if you looked at a broader cross section, which obviously is very difficult to sample, but in that broader sense of people who use geocaching apps on their phones or cache by phone, that the geocaching.com apps are going to be way up there because that's probably where most of your entry-level phone cachers start.
Yeah, and I think the reason that CGeo is so popular is because it's a good free app that's been out longer than almost anything else. If I remember, it actually beat the official app to market on Android. It certainly didn't beat the iOS app, but it beat the Android version of the app out, if I remember. So it was one of the early ones that survived, changed quite a bit, and in those early days it would have been something I told everyone to avoid because, among other things, it was getting people's accounts locked by scraping. So now they've made a lot of changes. It's in an open source setting and seems to be doing so much better than when it was from one developer. Let's move on those to an email before we actually dig into some of these apps, because that's primarily what we're going to be talking about tonight, are the individual apps. But JR and Juju emailed that they found an Android app that displays the current voltage and battery temperatures on an Android phone. It's called Ampere. And of course, we'll drop that link in the show notes. They wrote to tell us that they have used it to tell the status of chargers and cables. It's great to tell the status of your power pack also. We had one charger that never seemed to charge the phone. After using this app and trying different cables, they found that the cable was defective and only allowing 450 milliamps to the phone. A change of the cable and there was 950 and charged the phone. It also does show the rate of discharge. So that's a nice, handy little app for anyone who's on an Android phone and wants a little bit more information about what their battery is doing.
Daryl, that's great. It reminds me of a Kickstarter project I saw several years ago that was like a USB dongle. You'd plug it into your charger or USB port and your phone out the other end, and it would show you the amperage being used on that. So you could have used this in the same way, but boy, having an app is so much easier.
Oh, absolutely. And it tells you a little bit more than some of those will, because if you have a problem with a cable, it might not show what the actual charge rate is of the phone, because you could be losing some in a bad chip or something in the cable. Yeah, I had a iPhone, a lightning cable that I used on the iPhone the other day. Brand new, just came in, and it wouldn't even charge up the phone. I shouldn't say that. It would barely keep the charge rate going of what the battery is at with the draw of the screen. So, I'm powering the phone, and it's, pretty much staying right there. If I turn off the phone, it would get like 1% or 2% in an hour. So obviously, that's a bad cable, and I'm sending it back. It's not like you can't have these things, especially with like the lightning cables. And I do worry about that a little bit with the USB-C cables, because they're getting a lot more advanced. The cable is not just the cable in these newer cables. There are chips and everything to allow for things like that reversibility.
Which is kind of scary when you think about the technology going into a cable these days.
Yes, it's very scary. You're certainly not going to be able to just grab something off the shelf from your local electronics store and build your own cable now.
No.
But that's actually been true for the last several years.
Right.
It's probably the beginning of the machines uprising.
Skynet, because of cables.
He's onto us.
Well, let's start with the Android apps. And Land Monkey, we'll let you start by talking over the ones that we picked. And I'll just do a quick preface here that we didn't try to get all of the apps in the show. We tried to get 5 apps on each of the platforms that are currently supported and have the most interesting features or most recognizable within the community. So there are others out there that we're not going to take a look at because we simply don't have time for it.
Absolutely. So on the Android platform, what we were looking at is the geocaching intro app. We also looked at CGeo, yay, my favorite. We also looked, and so just to make sure everybody knows as well, both of those are free, CGeo and Caching Intro app. We also looked at CacheSense, which has a free demo plus $5 to get the full version unlocked. And we looked at GC Droid for geocaching. That again has a free preview, and it's actually cheaper. It's $4.99 for the Pro Key, so it's a whole cent cheaper. And the last one on the list, which I have to admit that I didn't get a chance to look at myself, but that one is Locus. It is free. It's DeBear's favorite. The Pro version for Locus is a whopping $7.99. I think maybe with that extra penny, and you may just round that up to $8. But and then there's also
penny you saved from the other one.
That's right. And then that's geocaching for Locus is another free. I think that's an add-on. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, it is. It's an add-on.
Yeah, and that's actually required for actually doing geocaching with the app. But if I remember, Dave, you can actually just do waypoints with Locus.
Yes, you can.
So you could actually do your geocaching just by doing the waypoints, but the whole point is you do that add-on and you turn it into the geocaching app. But Locus really isn't a geocaching app. It's a mapping navigation app for like the backcountry kind of thing. And that's what it's for. Then you do these add-ons. And I seem to remember one for like skydivers or something like that in there too. So if you're into that kind of stuff, check it out. But there are other plugins for Locus.
That's really getting the bird's eye view of a cache, of a ground zero around a cache. Come on, guys.
Well, that's for those
I got
five caches.
Come on.
I'm thinking you have to like skydive to the cache in that treetop platform and then just get down out of the tree from there.
Oh. That's why all those parachutes are around that tree.
There you
now,
go.
On iOS, we looked at several. I'll give a list and then we'll come back and talk about them. Geosphere, the geocaching intro app, Amaze, CacheBot, which was formerly Caches, GeoBucket, Geocaches, and Looking for Cache. And we'll jump into those in just a moment here. So.
Yeah, and we are only putting Geosphere in here because this is the favorite app for most of us. We're not really going to be rating it in tonight's discussions because it's been idle for something like 18 months now. The developer had gone MIA, came back, made a forum post on September 14th, and let us know that the app is in such a poor state as far as the code goes that he's not even able to make changes and submit it to the Apple Store because of the new requirements, and the app is so old that it can't be upgraded easily. So it's going to take several months to get this app back up and updated, and there are issues, but it does work with iOS 9, probably better in my experience than it did under iOS 8. So if you do want to do this, it is still my favorite app despite its shortcomings, but it is not a current app and it doesn't work as well as it probably should. However, it's still my favorite.
Right, and nor is it free.
No, it is not a free app, and this is one of the reasons why I don't suggest purchasing it at this point, because the developer has not said that this is going to be a free update once it comes around. It could be that he resubmits as, Geosphere 4 with its own entry, and you have to repurchase the program. It could go to a the in-app purchase model, which is what a lot of these are doing. Mm-hmm. So it's not one that we can really recommend people buy. If you have it, continue to use it because it's probably the best thing out there, depending on what you're looking for. So that's what I still use all the time, despite having gone through all of these. And that's one of the things that triggered it. we've been talking for probably about 6 months that Geosphere has gone idle. What is the next best thing on iOS? And I think in part because Geosphere has been so long out of date, we've seen a whole pile of new caching apps on iOS. And those have some promise, but at this point, unless you're looking for something specific that we'll talk about in a little bit, I still like Geosphere better since I already have it and already know it. But let's start off with LandMonkey's assessment of some of these other apps, because I know he got a chance to really dig into it, and we definitely want to hear from DeBear, because he is the man with Locus.
Fantastic. So yeah, I think DeBear and I well represented the Canadian contingent here by, going out and field testing a true metric buttload of apps here, and took some notes. And here's what's, I'll share with you guys what came up. It was a lot of fun. So I went out and did some caching specifically just by cell phone, which I almost never do. So it was a good learning opportunity, but then it also gave me, in some ways, a beginner's eye view of some of these apps, because some of these apps I've just never touched before. So when loaded them on the phone, went out, said, okay, if I was new to geocaching, how would this work? So all that to say, where I started was with the one that I actually do use from time to time, and that's CGeo. Darryl, Mrs. Landmonkey and I have been on the show before, and we talked about caching in Cuba, where you're not allowed to bring your GPSR. That was CGeo was saved the day on that one, and it is, as we said, it's a free app. Like I said, it's sort of my go-to in the rare times when I phone cache. As I was saying, we use it for road trips, even road trips up here around home. It's really handy just to store Earth caches and virtuals and field puzzles in it, so then you don't have to go and try and read through long descriptions on your GPSR screen. Version-wise, I'm currently using 2015 1030, which I believe is the most current version. And then I basically just had a few criteria that I'll go into here. Guys, please just feel free to jump in and interject with your thoughts and opinions and sarcastic remarks any point in time you so choose. All right, Dave, thank you. So sort of the first criteria I looked at with these apps was sort of like I said, looking at it as if I was a new geocacher. So the overall ease of use. Looked at the interface and layout. I find CGeo it's highly intuitive. It has a live map versus options for cache details and searches that are immediately present right on the splash screen. So right from there, you're able to get into it. The menuing, the config options are available on a per screen basis once you're in that respective layer of the app. They're always context sensitive, so I think that's well programmed. It's very, very helpful. One of the other things I think is important as people get a little more into geocaching is the ability to add a next stage or an additional set of coordinates for a cache. And CGeo makes that dead simple. It's very easy to use and access when you're working with a geocache. One of my pet peeves with all of the apps, and I'm really interested to hear what the situation is on some of the Apple-based apps, but PAF or TAF options, so phone a friend or text a friend options. Now, within CGeo, you can, going through a couple of menus, and it's fairly intuitive, but you can send a message to your geocaching friends via the gc.com IM service. It's helpful, but I mean, how many people really are going to respond to messages in real time that come in through the instant messaging on geocaching.com? I would rather if these apps could find a way that you can link to phone a friend or text a friend folks that you've saved in your phone book on your phone already. I think that would be super helpful.
If I recall, there had been a plugin for CGeo at one point. It was a separate app that you had to download, but I think that might have been broken. So it could be there, but I don't know for sure. And I will put in a plug real quick, though, that the new messages feature in geocaching.com is kind of cool if you have the intro app installed. And this is my one argument that everyone should have the intro app. because it will do the push notifications and let you know that you have a new message.
Fair point, good point. But if you don't have that app, it's going to go to your email, and you may or may not get that on your phone, depending on how you're configured. So yeah, it's not a...
Yeah, and you may get it just in the app and on the website and never notice it, So, yeah.
Daryl, we need to point out that's the intro app only, not the paid app.
Correct. And one of the reasons you'll notice that we don't have the paid geocaching.com apps on the list tonight is they've announced that those are in maintenance mode only. There's no further upgrades coming, and they're pretty much going to try to wrap everything into the intro app. It's only the paid apps, are there because they haven't finished wrapping in everything into the intro app, at which point the intro app is no longer going to be the intro app. It's just going to be the geocaching app.
With an in-app purchase.
Well, the impression that I got from their emails, or from their posts rather, is it's not going to require an in-app purchase. It's just going to be you don't get all the features unless you're a premium member. So it's going to be another way to drive the premium memberships.
Mind you, that's true now anyways.
Exactly.
Very cool. I'm going to skip some of my other notes that I had made about customization and in-app navigation, because I think I've more or less covered that stuff, and we don't have a ton of time tonight, and I have a ton of notes. So moving right along. Maps, one of the things I looked at. So with CGeo, the online maps available are your usual suspects, Google and a couple of OSM variations. I believe it has the OSM bike trails map, which is very cool. I always like using that one. It does have downloadable map support. It's really easy to use. It's an absolute vital necessity, I think, for any geocaching app to have that. It's easy to use and upload via the main menus. Has a really good set of filters that you can apply directly on the maps. The one thing where I felt it's lacking, and I really think this is probably where DeBear is going to be able to voice in on his favorite app, is the ability to put waypoints in. If it's there in the app, I couldn't find it, and that's the case for all the apps I reviewed.
Yeah, I don't believe CGeo does allow you to do new caches, essentially. Because we've tried that on a few events and no one could really figure out how to get at it. And I'm not a CGO fan. It didn't work at all for me on my first 2 Android phones that I had. So it wasn't until after it had gone open source and had a few revisions that it actually worked on any of the devices. And at that point, it just really never spoke to me. So this is not my go-to app on Android. However, a lot of this is very dependent on how you cache and what you like. Most of these are developed by a single person, maybe 2 or 3 people, and it's designed for the way that they cache and for what they're looking for. So all of these apps are totally different looks and feels and might fit someone better than they fit someone else, but it also means in order to get a good feel for it, you really need to be able to sit down and use that app, really figure it out, and take a lot more time than we had to do the research for this show, because we put the show together in a couple of months, and I did a weekend this weekend of just comparing 2 of my leading apps right now, and I really was having a hard time wrapping my head around them, especially because I was doing 2 at the same time.
Right.
But it's going to take a good month or so just to figure out which is which and what you like. So give it that time. Don't make a call after one caching trip that you really don't like this app, because you might find once you get into it, it is really, really good. It might just be a little bit steeper learning curve than you expected.
Absolutely. Moving along, some of the other things that I was testing out on the apps is obviously logging your caches, logging your DNFs, as well as your finds. One of the things that I found, the logging interface, on all of these apps, the logging interface was pretty solid. The one thing, however, is that I would love it if on these apps, if it was easier because maybe they do it, I just couldn't find it. But if it was easier to use wildcards or variables like you can in, I think Project GC allows it. Definitely GSAC allows it. Things like a variable for cache owner name or date or time and things like that, so that you can script your templates. But you can create templates. All of these apps, it was fairly easy to create the template. So I'm going to talk about some of this in general terms, so we don't have to go into it for every app. But that was pretty good, and all of them have online or offline logging options. So if you're in the field and you're typing your notes, you don't have to actually submit it to geocaching.com right away. You can save it and edit it later if you want, or if you're using voice to text and you want to maybe change up what's being interpreted before it gets logged.
No, mine always works just fine.
Especially when you go to Issaquah.
Issaquah.
One of the things I looked at was battery consumption. Of the group, I found that CGO was the most efficient for my phone. And this is actually probably a good point to bring up as well. I was doing all this testing on a Samsung S3, so it is an older phone. So, with a very cool OtterBox case because I use it for geocaching. but it is an older phone. It's the original battery in the phone. So you can only go so far before you have to plug in an external battery on those suckers. But generally, at work, battery consumption was pretty good on CGO. Its data usage, of course, I love the fact that you can do the offline caching if you've downloaded the maps offline, and you can manually add individual caches or add a GPX file, and all of it is really, really simple to do. And when you're online, all the apps are probably about the same in their data usage, because really they're just doing back-end calls to geocaching.com. What else have we got? Oh, go ahead, Daryl. Looks like you want to throw something in there.
I was just going to say it probably depends a lot on the type of maps that you're using as well. If you're downloading the maps on the fly, that's going to take a lot of bandwidth, especially if you're doing those satellite images, like is my preference. I love doing the hybrid, so I have to download both the satellite, and most of those satellites you're not allowed to cache through the licenses with the providers, so you have to do those live. But I love having those satellites, and that means I have to download those. Plus, doing the hybrid, it also has to download the vector-based maps as well, so it takes a little bit more than just even doing the satellite map.
Yeah, good point. Cache listings is one of the other things that I was looking at with the tools, and for CGO, it definitely has really solid search capabilities and download options. You can actually download your pocket queries straight into the app, which I love. That's a very cool function. As well, one of the things that really sets CGO apart for me is that you can use alternate listing sites. You can use OpenCaching North America as well as geocaching.com and put them all on the same map, which to me, big thumbs up. Love that. For cache placement, we talked earlier that for me, none of these apps I could find a way to actually place a pin, place a mark on it. But for existing caches, as long as you have the solved coordinates for your puzzles and multis, it will give you proximity radius, which is a handy feature if you're sort of walking about trying to see, can I squeeze one in here? And that's pretty easy to activate. All of these tools, all of the apps that I tested are really good with the trackables for logging them. They've got very easy to access and simple functions, and for dropping them within the logging function, you can very easily drop the trackables that are in your inventory. One of the things that I like about CGO is through the main menu, you can actually preset a setting for dipping or visiting, or whatever term you want to use, trackables in every cache you visit, every cache you log. So it's a very cool function. And the last criteria I have, I called it navigation options, but really just sort of focusing on the compass function. on the apps. All of them I found that generally they're fairly reliable with the accuracy on the GPS, the magnetic. Readability was something though that was interesting. I find CGO, the compass, the actual numbers on the compass, and maybe it's just my age, but they're too small to read. I just find that it's not big enough, but the way they've dealt with that is up on the top of the screen in fairly large font. They have the heading and distance in big numbers, so that helps. But I kind of like to be able to read the compass as well. Last thing is any extra functions while you're in compass mode. Definitely CGO gives you the ability to pull up hints with one button, which is kind of cool. If you're narrowing in, you can pull up the hint. What I couldn't find on any of these apps, and again, maybe it exists and I'm just too dumb to figure it out, but how to do projections. I think that would be a really handy function to have in these apps.
I'm pretty sure that both CGO and CacheSense do the projection, but it only is as you're creating the new waypoint. But it's been about a year since I've done that, so I can't say for sure.
Okay,
well, that
would make sense.
There aren't many that do. Projection isn't a thing that is easy to find on any app. So
right. Well, and most of the GPSRs, it's even a little bit buried in until you know your particular model. Garmin
True.
was famous for that because, like the 6D CSX, it was just right there in the menu. Then on the Colorado, they moved it to a different spot, which was, and they called it like Sight and Go or something like that, entirely different. Then it returned as projection in a completely different context in Oregon's.
On the eTrex, it's buried in its Sight and Go.
Yeah. So, it depends on which model from which Garmin unit even. This is not something that's a nice, easy thing. It's, you have to figure out what it's called and where it is on just about everything, and it's not in a similar spot on most. But I want to say CGO and CacheSense, you had to do add next waypoint to get that, and then it was one of the options from there. And I'm pretty sure I had done it in CGO on Renee's phone like 6 months ago or so.
Okay, well, I'll have to play with that. But again, it's not intuitive where it is, right? So
no, it's not entirely intuitive, but it's one of those. Once you find it and have used it once or twice, I'm sure you're going to remember it in both of the apps.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, before I jump into the next one I had on the list, Dave, did you want to have a go at your favorite?
Why, sure. Excuse me. So Locus Pro, I am unashamedly a big fan of. The thing that I really, really like about Locus Pro is that it's not a geocaching app. It is a mapping and navigation app that has geocaching stuff in it. So it has a lot of the features that I particularly like. The one thing that I really, really like about it is the download maps ability. You can look at maps live. It doesn't actually have Google Maps, which is kind of an interesting twist. Although there is a plugin you can use to kind of fake it, but the Google licenses aren't quite as good as some of the other ones for what it tries to do. But it has a large number of maps. It has a bunch of MapQuest maps, classic satellites, hybrids, OSM maps. It has maps for, like Swiss topo maps, German bike maps. If you get outside of the North American centric, there's a whole lot of maps available. I tend to, if I'm downloading maps, I use the MapQuest hybrid maps, which are basically satellite maps with roads on it, and you can download as many of those as you want, up to a certain limit, and that limit is 100,000 tiles per day, which is a lot.
Yes, it's a lot.
And if you run out of it that day, as long as if you need 200,000 tiles, you just have to wait 2 days to finish your download. And when it's downloaded, you can easily switch between the maps, which is another thing I like. Some of the other apps, you can download the maps, but you don't really have control over where they are. And I found deleting them to clear up space afterwards was a real pain in the neck trying to find out where they are. But in Locus Pro, they're all listed right there. You can switch between them. Another thing I like about the maps is when you download them, you can select a non-square to download. So you can just draw your own shape. So often what I'll do is I'll download when I'm traveling, I'll download caches along a route, and display them on there. And then I'll just draw the map of that route and cache those, because phones don't have a lot of space, as you're very much aware. And usually when I'm traveling, there's also like a movie on there to keep me distracted when I'm on an airplane or something, and some music. So I don't have the full benefit of the whole 16 gigs on my phone. So I just cache the maps along where those caches are. So I'll have those maps, but I don't need all the intermediate spaces in between that take up the extra space. That is kind of a waste. You can also control which levels I'm not of. So when you zoom in and out, you can control which one of those layers you can get. So oftentimes you'll I only grab like every second or third layer, so you save a lot of intermediate space. Because usually when you're looking at the middle stuff, not really looking for detail. You're just kind of looking, is it a mile left or a mile right, and is there a river in my way? So I usually cache like kind of the middle layers, and then like I think it's level 17, which is pretty much like the one you zoomed in, and you're just like, is it that tree or that tree level? So that saves some space. It also has offline vector maps, which are just road maps, basically, but they're very small and compact in relative comparison to tiles. So you can switch between those very easily. The geocaches themselves, it's missing actually some features that the other apps have. For example, you can't sort or search by favorite points, as an example. But you can, when you download caches, you can put them in separate folders, so you can easily turn off. These are all the caches I have downloaded. These are usually I put the target caches for a trip in another folder, so I can just turn those on and off, so I can see what I'm doing. It also allows you to, as most caching apps do, find the caches around you. Like, show me the 50 caches closest to me, but you can change where that waypoint is. So I can say, find me the 50 closest caches from the hotel I'm going to be staying at tomorrow night, and then I'll just download those there, and you can save it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice that way. It has a bunch of mapping apps. You can put in arbitrary waypoints at any point in time, either associated with the cache listing, or just a random another waypoint that you can save in a folder and they'll show up, which is very handy when you're doing lab caches or caches at events. Another thing I really like is when you have a cache listing and it has a bunch of waypoints listed, you can have it turn on all those waypoints. So when you're looking at a cache, you can see where all the waypoints are that's listed there on the map itself all at once. So you can get a very good idea of where the parking spots are and where the first waypoint is and where the trailhead thing is. So it gives you a really nice overview of those things. It does trackables well, yeah, I mean, I like it for those reasons, that it's more than just a geocaching app, and that tickles my fancy.
So Dave, one of the things I was thinking about while you were going through all those items, and this is something that the group of us talked about just before the show, is that often I think we were all saying the way that we need to really look at these apps is that a lot of them are kind of almost niche. Like, they all will do most of the things, but many of them are just really good at a niche. And again, Locust, really good with the maps and the custom mapping and the waypoint aspect, where a lot of the other apps are not that strong in that area. So I think it's good to have, for those who are listening to this, to be thinking about maybe you pair up a couple apps.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Because for example, one of the things it's not good at, like I mentioned, is finding the next best cache near you. I normally get around that in my own personal workflow because I already have those caches where I want mapped out. But if you're kind of just good jump, parachute in an area and say what's the best cache to find, Locust is not the one that's going to get that done. But it will tell you where you are in the world, which is nice.
All right, well, we're actually running a lot longer than we wanted to for this one. So let's maybe summarize the other ones, any quick things. And next one on the list is actually going to be Cache Sense. And I know from my first-hand experience that that's really nice if you want to do Munsies, since it shows the Munsies on the map. But one of the other things that was mentioned to us is there is a way to set colors in the different databases on the app, so you can have your different databases actually showing up at the same time with those pins in the different colors. So it does exactly what Shorty Knits was asking about a few episodes back, and I think 2, maybe 3 different people emailed us on that, and I forwarded all those on.
Yeah, that's actually a very powerful feature, and I'm happy
is.
that exists. I'll have to check that out.
And that
is
has been my go-to app on Android, though GC Droid is a very powerful app, and I'm paying more and more attention to it. I just haven't had the chance to dig into it because I really haven't been out caching with Android. Well, I haven't been caching all that much lately, but especially with taking out an Android device to do so.
So, Daryl, I wanted to just throw in a little bit of experience I had with CacheSense and the Munzie piece. While it will show you the Munzies, the pins on the map, which is very cool, but it can also make your map very, very cluttered.
Yes.
So you want to be aware of that. But I had, at the time I loaded it, I had Munzie 2 and Munzie 3.0, because Munzie 3.0 came out while I was doing this testing. And what I found is that when I would launch, and this is the other thing, like CacheSense won't allow you to scan a Munzie, but you can hit a button to get it to launch the Munzie app and then scan it, which is great. But what I found is it would only launch version 2. And once I removed version 2, it would not launch version 3. And that functionality just stopped. So just, buyer beware, caveat emptor.
I wonder if you have to reinstall the version 3 app to get it to...
I actually tried that. It didn't work.
Okay. So that's something that they'll have to patch in CacheSense. All right, so I think for me that's probably my go-to recommendation on Android still. CGO is free. If you can wrap your head around it, that's a good one to use. But my preference is for CacheSense on Android. Of course, I like the GC Droid from what I've seen, and it definitely seems to be another power user caching app.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else we want to add on any of these other ones then?
No, the only thing I would maybe add is that, again, if you like using the alternate listing sites, and again, this just may be my experience, but I found that it was only CGO that would actually allow you to use OCNA and geocaching.com.
Yeah, I believe that's actually true. And this is one of the...
I'm pretty sure that Locus, it doesn't have the live lookups for open caching, but if you download the GPX, it will read them and display them as well. So it's not quite as handy that way, but you can use them if you wish.
Well, I don't think it does the live logging either, does it?
I have not tried it, but I would be very surprised if it did.
Yeah. So yeah, it will support those caches, and if you want to do that. There are some other GPS style apps where you can import the GPXs, so there's other ones. But yeah, if you're doing a bunch of the alternative listing sites, then that's something that you want to look at is whether it does it. And CGO is right now the only one on the list that actually natively supports those APIs. So let's move into the iOS apps, and we're going to start, of course, with the geocaching intro app, which is free. One of the interesting things, though, is that actually supports the Apple Watch. So, Chris, you want to read what Antaeus actually sent us in about that?
Yeah, Antaeus sent us via email. Navigation is not all that great on the watch, since it doesn't have the ability to use the magnetic compass heading. So it uses course-based heading. You have to start moving a bit before it points you in the right direction. I like it as a means of battery saving life on my phone between caches, like when you're on a trail. Just do a quick look at the watch to see how close you are, and when you get close enough, pull out your phone or GPSR. I also like the ability to log the cache from the watch. It uses dictation, so it's not always perfect, nor does it have all the punctuation you would normally use, but it does get the job done.
Which is a very handy thing, because among other things, in discussions with Antaeus later on, it sounds like it will actually run in the background while you're doing something like Periscope. So,
interesting.
Kind of actually thinking now about getting an Apple Watch since they're on sale for $50 off at Best Buy. But I really, really didn't want to get an Apple Watch. But as we also
don't do it. Don't.
I don't want to. It's a first-generation Apple product. Don't buy it. But this has that live push notifications for the messaging, which is a big feature that's nice to have. So I have this on my phone for just that reason. You'll find that I have another app that I do the same thing with a little later, where it's on my phone for one reason, but I don't really like to use it for anything. So,
Daryl,
it's a great feature.
Quick note. I downloaded the intro app thinking, oh, it's the intro app. You get 3 caches and that's it. As a premium user, it's a full-fledged app.
Correct. And that's one thing that we should mention. As a premium user, it's the full-fledged app. But if you're not premium, it does limit the caches that you can view. So unlike some of the other ones where you can actually view and log any of the caches, this won't even let you get to some of the things like the puzzle caches unless you're a premium member. So that's a little bit of a problem. But it is a free app, and it is a great tool to get someone into it, because it's really easy to say, okay, just go to the App Store, search for geocaching intro, and download that. That will help you get started. And I've done that with a few different people lately to get them going in geocaching without spending any money. They have their own phone. You can kind of talk them to getting the cache and everything. But it is only for iPhone. This one does not work on, well, it works as an iPhone app, but on the tablets, it doesn't have that native iPad support.
No, just magnified.
Exactly. And then next one on the list is a new one called Amaze, and this is really an interesting app. Again, it's only for the iPhone, but it is available in a free light version and a $2.99 Pro version. The claim to fame for this one is it's actually taking ratings from its own database. It has its amazing rating service, or Amaze rating service, GC Vote, and the favorite points from geocaching.com, and it's trying to figure out what are the best caches for whatever it is that you're trying to do at that point. Now, here's a big problem. The Lite app in this case is really frustrating and very useless, and I think it's a disservice to the app. When I got the Lite version and started going into it and trying to test it, I was like, this isn't even usable. Well, I better download the Pro version just to make sure, because a lot of the stuff was saying, Pro version. When I got the Pro version installed, it started working and was actually something I could see using if you're looking for those 1 or 2 great caches to do. This is going to be probably the best way to find them, but it's not an app that I'd want to use on a regular basis. So I went and bought it. It's only $3. It's not a big deal. So I'll probably keep it on the phone, and if I'm in an area and say, hey, I want to find a really good cache right now because I got a couple of hours to kill, this is probably going to be my go-to now for doing that.
Interesting. I'm going to have to look at that. Now, I looked at CacheBot, which was formerly called Caches. I got the free version, and like you, Daryl, I found the free version not quite infuriating, but frustrating. It's an all-white app, okay? So right now, here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of night. And trying to use an all-white app at night destroys any night vision. So I'm not fond of that. I would like to see a night mode, flip in that, maybe it's white on black then, or some other color.
You could just do an inverse of the screen, maybe.
Yeah. And you could do that through the phone itself, but that's not the point.
Right.
It worked fine. It chose yards as its default measurement distance, which I'm not used to working in.
It's almost like meters.
I was going to say, Land Monkey's over there going, oh, I can figure out yards.
Those I can work with.
I'm used to working in feet and miles, not the yards in between. So not a big deal, but just one of those little things you go, why did it choose yards? And then with the free version, so I went out to hunt a cache, and I thought I couldn't find it, so let's look at the previous logs. No, that's a pro feature. So it's just a few little things here and there that I'm like, this could be good, but that's a $3 investment for Amaze. Nothing. When you're talking a $7 investment for CacheBot, and you think, I don't know if I'll like it or not, it makes you think twice, or at least it does for me. I don't know $7 seems to be more, but it's I spend that at lunch. It's not a big deal, but
Well, $7 is over twice as much more as Amaze.
yeah, but it's just one of those things. $7. Why is it going to be worth that?
Right. And this is one of the
Funny
reasons
that
why
way.
I think the light version does a disservice to the pro version, because it is so limited. I actually had my nephew download it and try it, and he is having just problem after problem trying to use it. So the only time he can use it is when he's with me, and he ends up going back to the intro app most of the time, because the intro app ends up being better for him than Cashbot is. And it might be something he'd be interested in, but I'm not going to tell him to do that because he's not a premium member. And at $6 or $7.99 to do the upgrade, he's not going to get the value out of it. What I find really cool about Cashbot is it does this push notification. So what you do is you set up using the premium membership. You have to have that. Your geocaching.com notification to send to their email server with its own address the new publishes. So I can set up any of my notifications for whatever area I want, wherever I want, for whatever type of caches, and it sends the push notifications to the phone. So it pops up with the notification, a new cache has been published of this type at this location. It's so far from your current coordinates, and then you just tap that notification, go right in, and you're there. So for the FTF hunters, this is killer. This is the app for doing that. Even though I end up switching back to Geosphere, I use it just for that, to get an idea of where the cache is, get the basic information, because I can already be rolling in the car and then bring up another app to do all my navigation, because I already know where it is and I'm going to that location.
Well, obviously not while you're driving.
Yeah.
Not while I'm driving. Well, most of the time when I do that, I actually just drive. Okay, I know it's over here, so I'm just routing this way, and once I get to that parking lot, then I'll pull out Geosphere and do the live caches. So that's the only reason I use this app, but it's really nice for that.
I've got to ask a question coming out of what the bad cop was sharing earlier about this default setting of yards. If you guys can't figure out yards, how do you figure out watching American football?
No, yards is not a foreign concept to me. Okay.
It's a foreign concept in the field.
In the field, yeah. It's not one of the ones that I'm used to looking at. I'll put it that way.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm
actually,
used to looking at feet. Meters, if I get my mind set on it, I can do it. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, as a Canadian, I grew up with meters, but when I geocache strictly as an American, like in America. So I got used to feet, and you get really intuitive of 30 feet is that far. So when I go back to Canada, I'm caching with at their geocaches, and they're saying, it's only 10 meters. I know I can do the math and figure out what it is, but intuitively, you don't have the sense that 10 meters is that distance.
Right.
So it really does throw you
10
off.
meters, I must be standing on it.
Yeah.
So let's move on to GeoBucket, which has been around for quite a long time and was probably the first iPad-enabled app that I know of that did. I should say universal, because there was an iPad app before this one that has vanished and was not very good. But this one does work on both iPhones and iPads. It's free, but you have to pay $3.99 to remove the ads, and if you're actually going to use it, I highly recommend doing that, especially on the iPad, because those ads take up way too much room, and
right.
you
But you
accidentally
can
click them.
use it. The ads are in the way,
Exactly.
but it's fully functional.
Yeah,
wanna throw that out
that's the only difference when you pay, is you get rid of those advertisements. So it's a fully functional app. If you want to take a look at it, definitely do it. But if you decide you're going to use the app, you're probably going to want to remove those ads.
Right.
And the thing that I really like about GeoBucket is the iPad gives you a full map screen. So your whole screen becomes a map, and that's one of the most beautiful situations is in the car. If you're trying to plan a road trip or a caching trip or something on the fly, that's one of the best tools that you can use is GeoBucket with that nice big map screen. No interference. It's just all map and caches. But that's the only thing I like about GeoBucket. Everything else about it I find pretty infuriating. But unlike any of the ones we've mentioned to this point, this does support importing zip and GPX files, so you can use it to do the offline caching. And I haven't actually tested it to make sure, but I'm pretty sure it will allow you to do the unpublished caches. It doesn't support caches from other sites, but I think it will do the unlisted caches.
Nice. And the last one we want to talk about on iOS is called GeoCaches. Again, it's a free app. In-app donations of $1.99 or $4.99. It's a universal one. It works on the iPhone, iPad, and on the Apple Watch.
Well, and I really wanted to get a feel for what this one was like on an Apple Watch, but of course, no one on this show has an Apple Watch, and I didn't get a chance to ask anyone else to check it out because I just totally forgot about it.
You know, Daryl, they're $50 off right now.
I know. Well, and,
no, buy differently.
Awfully tempting.
My Pebble Time just completely freaked out on me earlier this week, and I was right there about to click the buy button on the Apple Watch because I'm getting so frustrated with my Pebble Time anyway that it's like, okay, I don't even care if they can get this thing fixed. I'm done with the Pebble. I'm off their system. I want something else.
What?
But I've become so addicted to having those notifications on my wrist that it was really frustrating for the 2 days that I couldn't get my Pebble Time to work. Actually,
Daryl's going through notification withdrawals.
Well, yeah.
That's why.
Well, here's what happened to me is, even like at work, I'll get a ping or something on the phone. I just look down at my watch and go, well, I started doing this. Like, oh, man, I can't. So I got to go all the way back over to the other desk to get this,
I have to go look at my phone? Are you kidding me?
Well, and I got so used to when I come home, I'll plug the phone in on one of the chargers, either downstairs or upstairs, and I just walk around. So
Right.
I'm like sitting at the dinner table. I don't know what that is. I got to go run and get it. So it's like now I feel like I'm on a leash again without it. But fortunately, it's working. Okay, but back to this one. This is a nice app to try out. Again, I'm not really liking it for anything in particular, but it is free and it does seem to work pretty well. So, if it works for you, give it a shot and try it out. I don't tend to like it as much as what is actually the last app. And Chris, I think you missed this one because it's not.
I missed both, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have the highlights. Looking for Cache has been out for a few years now. And one of the problems is that this one went 2.0 during the test period, so I had to relearn the whole thing. Still haven't gotten a good grasp on it, but of the ones we're talking about, this is my favorite. The light version is free and is really very usable. I don't think Chris likes this one very much.
I do. I haven't tried 2.0, so I'll give it that.
Okay.
1.0, I could not figure out how to make this thing do anything.
2 is definitely a lot better, but it is a little bit of a curve, especially if you're used to something like Geosphere. It's a totally different arrangement that it's close enough that you think things should be working one way, but they don't. So again, this is kind of what I was talking about. You really have to spend a lot of time to learn the app and get comfortable with it to make sure that it's going to be something that you can work with. Continuing on, the Pro version, though, is a $9 investment, $8.99. But it is an iPhone and iPad app. The thing I don't like about the iPad, you can't get to a full-screen map that I could find. It may support it, and I just couldn't figure out how to make it do that. But you always end up with a list of caches over at the left side of the screen, which is actually kind of a nice feature. I definitely like having that there, but I'd like to have the option to go to that full screen, retract the drawer of caches and be able to do it. But it does ingest the zip and GPX files again. So really, if you're looking to do those offline caches, the ones at the events, that kind of stuff, there's only 2 apps that I can recommend in this: Looking for Cache and GeoBucket. So Looking for Cache is my go-to app because I don't really like GeoBucket. Well, and I should say, of the apps that we're talking about tonight, because again, I'm still using Geosphere. That's still my favorite, and that does color my evaluation of all of these, is because Geosphere is such a mature app with so many of the functions that I want. The real feature I think people are going to like from looking for cache that none of the others have is you can add multiple accounts and do logging on all of those accounts, or turn on and off the logging for individual caches on those accounts. So if you're a family going out caching, one person can do the logging for the entire family. Or if you want to have your buddies on a power trail go, sign into your account, set that up, you can do all the logs for everyone in your group. That, to me, is a invaluable feature if that's something that you're specifically looking for. Any last thoughts on the iOS apps?
I think that pretty much covers it for iOS. Look at the one that fits your style with not only caching, but the way you want to use the app. Each one of these have a different style, different interface. See which one fits you.
Yeah, it really does require that you go and take a look at some of this stuff, get a feel for the app. But we've given you enough to hopefully go out and take a look at these with a little bit of educated mind to see which ones you want to look at. You might not want all of them, or look at all of them, and narrow it down to one or two. And certainly don't pay money for any of these until you actually try the free light versions. All right, that's actually going to wrap it up for tonight because we are running over our usual time length, and I know a lot of people don't like the hour-plus shows in their feed.
And so, Land Monkey's doing a walkabout.
I was going to say Land Monkey has to actually escape, which he appears to be doing as we talk.
Actually, I had to find power.
Oh, okay. And here I thought you had to get to your meeting. But thank you both, Dave and Land Monkey, for joining us. You gave us a whole lot of great information about these apps, and hopefully we'll have people writing in to tell us what their preference is once they start exploring and checking out more of these apps. But that's my big takeaway, I think, from this is we've had enough changes on both Android and iOS in the last couple of years with the apps. Get out there, take a look at it. If you're on the paid geocaching app as your primary, which a lot of people told us they are, definitely start taking a look around because that app is not going to be supported for much longer. It might be 2 years, but it might only be 6 months, and then they're going to stop doing the updates to it in favor of just the intro app. Mm-hmm. And the intro app is not going to be, in all probability, something that most of us experienced cachers want to use. All right, so thank you again, gentlemen. It was a pleasure having you on again. And, of course, Dave, you're going to be back next week. And Land Monkey, we want to get you back on again before too long. And I don't know that I got a reply. I actually had another one that I wanted to talk to you about. So,
okay, I better go check my emails.
Yeah, we'll probably talk. I think I actually might have done it as a direct message or something. But we'll probably talk in a moment after the show. Right now, though, I want to thank all of our patrons for your support. Making the shows possible. And we had another fun but very small patron hangout last night. That one was actually a lot of fun, Chris. I got a lot of people commenting, I shouldn't say a lot, a couple of people commenting that they did enjoy the live geocache search.
Yeah, so I went night caching, just, it's 6 o'clock here, it's night. And yeah, it's interesting holding a mag light in one hand, a phone in another, and trying to find a geocache.
Yeah, we'll have to get you some nice, what is it called? There's a quadcopter that actually does there's a few of them now, that actually does the tracking of you by
right,
like a wrist mounted thing. No, the phone drone might do it. Some of them actually do.
That'd be awesome. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll have to look into something like that for you. Make you do that once a month. You have to go find a night cache. As on the patron hangout. But on a serious note, as the patrons, they do get access to the bonus shows. We've done a few of those, I think, a couple a month at least, for the last 13, 14 months that we've been having the patron shows. Plus, you get the usually monthly. We probably actually won't have a patron hangout in December just because it is such a busy month for all of us. But we will take a look at the calendars, and hopefully we can seem to squeeze something in. But those are always a blast. usually during the week, but we move those around hopefully to get more people involved with the patron hangout shows. And then we have the weekly picks, which we tend to not do much interesting geocaching stuff on there, more interesting other geeky, techie stuff. So definitely check that out if you are a patron. And if you're not a patron and you think that you're getting any value out of the shows, please consider going over to our website, clicking on that Patreon link, and making a donation for whatever you think this show brings you in value.
Exactly. And as we like to do at the start of every show, we tell you the winner of last week's question. Guess what? We have a question for next week's show. So get an email ready. Send that to Daryl. It's Cachemaniacs. I've completely forgotten.
Yes, GeoGearHeads at Cachemaniacs.com.
What's the name of the show, Daryl?
GeoGearHeads.
This is because we've done 203 shows. Send it.
And the bad cop has done his final one now.
Yes, thank you. It was nice. It was nice being here with you while it lasted. Sorry, my mind has gone. So, did I tell you to get an email ready? Because you need to get an email ready. Address that to GeoGearHeads at Cachemaniacs.com with the subject question 204. And you need to answer this question. If you're a Canadian, this should be simple. What Canadian sitcom was featured in the September 15th, 2015 post on DeBear's blog? How about that? If you get that in an email to GeoGearHeads at Cachemaniacs.com, subject question 104, get that to us by November 25th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're going to win a prize from ProjectGC.com. That's a fabulous website.
It is, and it's a favorite tool of a lot of our guests and fans.
DeBear, I got to ask you a question. If people can't figure it out, are they a jackass?
Oh, yes.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the upcoming...
Wow. I didn't know the answer, so I know where I fit now. Thanks, guys.
I was going to say that just means they're not Canadian, but...
Oh, yeah.
Same thing.
Really close to Canada. Does that count?
Ooh, and I thought Canadians were supposed to be nice. Okay, this is one for Mark, and he can hold this over Dr. D's head. Now, November 26th, which is Thanksgiving here in the U.S., which is next week's show, we're going to have a Canadian back to talk about his road caching adventures. I'm not sure which Canadian that is, though.
I don't know,
We might have to find a new one, because, you know...
They've already done Canadian Thanksgiving, so they're not missing anything.
Exactly. They're insulting everyone who's not Canadian. Not that I'm necessarily thinking that that's a bad idea.
Well, it's hockey season, so politeness goes out the door.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So our first show of December is going to be featuring Rob of Munsey, but we're not talking about the Munsies. We're talking about the non-Munsey stuff. Did you track that? And then December 10th is going to be our next randomized show, and we're going to be excited to host Sonny of Podcaster on that episode. Then Dano of Team Poogatch returns on December 17th for episode 207 when we're talking about cold weather caching. Now, that's something Canadians don't know anything about, right, guys?
No.
Right.
No.
Nothing.
Sunny and tropical up north.
And then we're going to have a special show on Christmas Eve with Scott Burks and Mark of OBEEP talking about live streaming. And that's going to be
about the Christmas show I can think of.
How very Christmas.
Yeah. Well, hey, you want to stream your Christmas tree, right? Stream opening the presents so that your relatives can find it.
Ooh.
Well, yeah, we're going to be
Periscope
talking about Periscope, Meerkat, Skype, all that kind of stuff, and get an idea of what some of the do's and don'ts are and what you might want to be aware of either way before you start live streaming or maybe even participating in a live stream. I don't know.
Well, what we ask you to do is check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647. Daryl, you can email us. You know where? GeoGearHeads at cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming, so please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2015 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cachemaniac.